we can help facilitate people to get active or to help them make lifestyle choices such that they'll be more likely to do them. And that's where I think a big part of the mission could be.
Welcome to Ortho Static, the Academy of Orthopedic Physical Therapy's podcast. I am Ben Braxley, and today I will be hosting Erik Moen, physical therapist and owner at Corpore Sano Physical Therapy, and also bikept.com. Erik really defined the niche of bicycling in the physical therapy space, and we have a great conversation about what it was like when he kind of joined that area, what he sees as the future of PT and the MSK primary care role, and also just about how to be and thrive around bicycles as a physical therapist or physical therapist assistant. So hope you will listen and enjoy my conversation today with Erik Moen. All right, I am Ben Braxley. I'll be hosting today. I'm a longtime Academy of Orthopedic Physical Therapy member. I also sit on the board of APTA Georgia, and I'm honored to be on the executive team of this podcast. So I'm here today with Erik Moen, and I'm going to give you a little bio and let Erik take it away with some of his background as well. But Erik is a niche practitioner in bicycles, and he has held many roles at both the state and national level within physical therapy. Some highlights include being the past president of PTWA or APTA Washington and delivering a centennial lecture. Erik teaches PTs to manage bicyclists all over the world, and he is the head of classification for UCI paracycling. He also is the owner of Bike PT and Corpore Sano Physical Therapy in Seattle, Washington. So Erik, I'm going to turn it over to you, but first I'm going to get us started with a question. You really defined the niche of bicycling in physical therapy. I'd love to hear a little of your background in that regard, maybe who was in play when you got into it and how much that field has changed for you now.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Ben, and thank you, the Academy of Orthopedic Physical Therapy, for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to it's a thing that it's a lifetime passion. The question of how did this all happen? I think it was a carefully curated storm, so to speak. It was I was born with some club foot, which required constant orthopedic attention, and I loved to play sport. So I was involved with a bunch of different things, but bicycling was one of those things that I really resonated with throughout my life. And as I started to get into bicycle racing, I understood that I needed to change some things on the bike to make it work for me, because you couldn't just jump on a bike and perform high volume, high intensity work without having the attention to biomechanics and the acknowledgement of orthopedics. When I was starting to ask questions of like, how should I change the position of my bike such that I could work better? I was starting to look around for different resources, researched around, and there was really pretty limited resources. There was some people who were starting to do bike fit, medically based or orthopedically based bike fit services in Colorado. And there was one gentleman down in California who was doing and educating some people about bike fit for his rehabilitation of cardiac patients. And so there's very limited resources out there. And so because of the geographic limitations and because I wasn't necessarily coming up with answers that met my needs, I was like, heck, I'm a physio. I'm going to work this out myself. And so I did the research. I did a lot of early research around bicycle function, bicycle biomechanics. I was inspired by a mechanical engineer out of UC Davis who did a lot of bike-related research in biomechanics, a lot of boring math and physics, which puts most people to sleep, but it was really interesting to me. And then also did, surveyed clinical stuff. There was some emerging clinical commentary stuff from around the United States and some in Europe. And so I started looking at that and getting some inspirations. And then once I became a PT and started doing this in practice, there were some opportunities to start teaching and talking about this. And so I started teaching. My first clinical bike-related class was in 1993. And then it eventually morphed into the bike PT education process, and which has kind of ebbed and flowed over the years. But in general, it teaches physical therapists about the clinical management of bicyclists.
Excellent. And as a past participant of the bike PT classes, I have to say it's any continuing education that requires safety equipment when you go out on a bike for an experience is pretty phenomenal. So you're definitely expanding the knowledge, and to go from a handful of people, if even that, to the number of bike PT certified therapists is really pretty phenomenal as the sport has grown in the US. So I'll kick over to our next question then, which is, given your role and what you do for your day job, what would you say the blend is of your orthopedic skills and your bicycle know-how?
Well, that's a great question, Ben. I think one of the things that that differentiates me between, say, like the average bike fitter at a bike shop is that I have orthopedic knowledge and the ability to evaluate and put into perspective what's going on with the body. I think that's where the physio is really uniquely qualified to work with bicyclists, because we have that body of knowledge, and that body of knowledge to evaluate and put into perspective the implications to movement and function. If one doesn't have that body of knowledge, it maybe makes a person make some inappropriate or ill-informed decisions on what they do for the bicyclists in their approach. And so the ability to within our license to evaluate is very, very critical. So for example, what's being taught in the bike fit industry for bike industry people is they're I'll say deputizing bike fitters to evaluate things like flexibility and leg length discrepancy. So it's common that I get people, within my practice, I get people who've been to other bike fitters and they haven't necessarily done well. And they'll come in and say, well, I've been told I have a leg length discrepancy. And I say, okay, well, where? And, it's just simple things like that. It's like, oftentimes they really don't have a leg length discrepancy, and putting that into, me being able to evaluate and putting it into perspective with regards to the person's bike function is really important. Or, differentiating low back pain versus sacroiliac issues has a big to do with how we approach the bike, the bicycle, the bicyclist, the ability to look at, will this mobility change? Will it, when it changes and we evaluate this, how that implies how we approach a person's position on the bike. So, the orthopedic assessment, the neuromuscular, musculoskeletal assessment is really, I'd say, important for the higher level performance of positional strategies on the bike.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. Yeah, that really gets to one of my follow-on questions in kind of planning for this podcast is, who is out there making these calls for individuals on their bicycles, if not us? And I kind of lumped it into, you ask other cyclists, maybe you talk to shop employees, or maybe if you're fortunate enough to know to look for a PT, you can find a PT with this expertise. So again, credit where it's due to expanding that knowledge and giving people more access. Because the worst thing is if someone tries to get into cycling and then ultimately has so many pain issues that they abandon the sport. And I'm sure you've seen some of that where people have left and then eventually come back. as well. So thank you
Yep.
for speaking to that. When we kind of did the groundwork for this podcast, asked what are the three most important things for people to know, and you said bicycling is a healthy activity for populations, that most pains and overuse injuries may be alleviated by changing the individual's position on the bicycle, and that PTs are uniquely qualified to work with cyclists on movement dysfunction. And I really think you're bringing those points into really each of your answers as we go forward. Do any of those kind of prompts bring anything else up that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I think having been involved with APTA, and we talk about populational health or the emergence of populational health, and I'll say one of the things that I'm becoming pretty impassioned with is that the physio really becomes a primary musculoskeletal health professional, meaning most aches and pains can be evaluated by the physio to get things going and started with sometimes what seems like the most, back pain. I've got horrible back pain. If you go see a physio and just get started with simple things, things can get better. So same thing with bike. If you've got an ache and pain on the bike, sometimes just the most simple little innocuous little changes, or what seems to be innocuous little changes, can minimize or nullify that ache and pain, and allows the person to get back out and enjoy bicycling without the burden of, I got to have pain to make it seem like it's worth it. The thing is, with any sport, with any regular activity, with any health stimulus, you're hoping that you can perform the activity. You feel tired, great, but you're not ruined. The goal is, I should be able to go out and do something the next day and not be ruined, or not feel like that specific ache or pain is taking me off the bicycle, or making me feel like it's limiting my participation. And so for what we do in bike positioning, for people who are maybe a little more complex, when we talk about complexity, here's, I guess, a little riff. Most bike, initial bike changes, bike positioning can be managed by most people who have an idea of bike positioning, bike fit. So like, for example, you can start at the bike shop, no problem. They sell you the bike, you're a captive audience, you get, oh, I've got this bike fit, so we're going to do some bike fit. Great. If that doesn't help, then you've got these other providers who can provide information. Just like there's a team, if we're in the orthopedic realm, orthopedic team might involve physio, orthopedist, nurse practitioner, sports medicine doctor, trained in the US, who's mostly orthopedic based, physiatrist. There's many people who can provide information. But really, when we talk about the niche physio who is qualified to, or interested, qualified to work with bicyclists, they're kind of, they say the triple threat. They have the bicycle knowledge of like what it is to train for bicycling, and hopefully in the different aspects of cycling, road, dirt, aerodynamics, they've got some interest in that. They have the mechanical knowledge, meaning if you're going to work with bicyclists and alter their position, you need to be able to play with wrenches and safely adjust positions and understand implications of adjustment to make it for the user. And then also understanding the orthopedic contributions to a person's position on the bike, whether it's a limitation, or, we can go here because you're flexible, or we can't go here because you're flexible.
Erik, we seem to be experiencing a little freezing up. I'm going to hope we can edit this in post-production and that you come back. There you are.
Oh, shoot. Where did I leave off? I was on a good riff.
No, you were talking about meeting the cyclists where they are. I remember a line from your course that was, the body is adaptable and the bike is modifiable. Is that something along those lines? Yeah. And
the bike's
you're kind of touching in on that.
Yeah, I give credit to one of the earlier pioneers in orthopedic orthopedic related bicycling or clinical management of clinical management of the bicyclists was a group out of Boulder. There's a guy, Andy Pruitt. His background is athletic training and physician assistant. They started a Boulder Center of Sports Medicine specific for bicycling, and he was one of the earlier lecturers around the we'd say sports medicine scene about management of the cyclist clinically, and his big thing was the marriage of the bicyclist to the bicycle, and talking about the bicycle being adaptable and the body being, or the bicycle being adjustable and the body being adaptable. And who better to understand that than the physio who has special knowledge of bicycling? It's understanding the perspective of how the body can change, or if it can change, and at what rate. And that has implications to how we approach a person on their bicycle, whether it's a person who's just starting out with bicycling or the person who's at a high level contesting world championships.
Love it. And I'm going to get into kind of a nitty gritty question with you. In that example of someone that's maybe traveling near or far for a competition, we spend this time and we use our expertise to get someone really dialed in on the bike. What do you recommend to people to ensure that they're getting their fit back to how you specified? Like, what's just a nitty gritty, a practical tip of how to make that happen, Erik?
I think when we talk about athletic competencies and sports specific competencies, we'd say there's some rudimentary approaches to any sport, whether it's cycling, whether it's basketball, whether it's this, that, or the other. I think one of the rudimentary skills a cyclist who is traveling should have is understanding the measurement of their position on the bicycle, which has implications to all the contact points of their bicycle, meaning saddle position, position of foot to pedal, position of handlebars, which is saddle tilt, handlebar rotation or tilt. Typically you're not going to change your pedal cleat system so much, but the thing is you need to be able to assess your position of the bike and keep it reliable. That's really, I think a well-trained athlete will have the ability to reposition their bike. A well-trained athlete, even if it's a little tiny off, should be able to tolerate things okay, but understand that it probably could be a little bit better. So I don't know if you are an elite level cyclist, part of your eliteness should be your ability to measure, reassess, and replicate position in spite of travel.
Nice. Thank you, Erik. And one last question, and you've already spoken to this to an extent, but I really feel like a through line in your early responses was that there's a place for bicycling in populations and in population health initiatives specifically. So my question is, where might an orthopedic PT or PTA even get their foot in the door in this population health space with bicycles being a focus? What are your thoughts there?
So my thoughts are that a lot of times within bicycling, all we think about are elite racers here in the United States, or what sexiness sells in bikes. So super stupid expensive bikes are out there in the marketplace, and a lot of times that's what people believe is bicycling. But when we take a look at the vast majority of people who use bikes, they're not on those super expensive bikes. They're maybe riding the bike 20 times a year. But if we can get people to use bicycles, a lot of things happen. One, we decrease our carbon footprint. We get people out of cars. And when people start using their bikes, they start working on strength. They start working on cardiovascular fitness. They start working on body composition. Those sorts of things. And if we can keep them on their bikes and keep them happy and healthy, then they're more likely to do that again and again. If they have a bad experience where my back is killing me, my knee is killing me, who wants to do that? But if we can somehow enable that pain or ache to go away and people all of a sudden start liking the bicycling, then they're more likely to do it. I think physios have an important charge in helping with populational health. And, you know, when we look at like what are the big contributions to the we'd say burden of healthcare costs, these are all things like lack of exercise, related to lack of exercise for the most part, or movement. You know, that's, we can have a part of that. We can help facilitate people to get active, or to make lifestyle choices, or to help them make lifestyle choices such that they'll be more likely to do them. And that's where I think a big part of the mission could be for people to just focus on, oh, you know, I want to treat the Tour de France star. I mean, that, come on, that's such a small percentage of a bicycling continuum that it's really where we need to have our work is in the larger part of the bell curve or distribution of bicyclists. And those are people who are just doing day-to-day stuff, who might be thinking about bike commuting because their company that they work for has some sort of incentive program to do that. We have several examples of that in Seattle, where companies support bicycle commuting, mostly to get cars off the road and out of their parking garages. But it's a significantly healthy choice. Those people who ride their bikes feel better about, one, their health, and two, they're out of the car. And, you know, being in the car in rush hour traffic is stressful. And so when you're on their bike, you have a much better balance of life.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite things that you do, Erik, on social media, because I know you have a presence, is you know, you'll take a photo of some aspect of a bike or a fit set and ask what the presenting complaint was, or what a recommended fix would be. And I find that very insightful as someone who doesn't live in bicycles every day, but it's a fun thing to kind of follow along and make a guess and read comments. So, you know, this is kind of the wrap up of our podcast today. But if somebody wanted to follow you or find out more about Bike PT or Corpore Sano, where can they look for you, Erik?
Well, first of all, my Bike PT website is just about to be revamped, refreshed. So if you're seeing the old one, please have patience, it'll come up. And then Corpore Sano PT, C-O-R-P-O-R-E, Sano, S-A-N-O, pt.com. Corpore Sano is healthy body in Latin. Essentially a direct translation. So CorporeSanoPT.com has my current studio offerings with regards to space. And you can always reach out to me, find me on Instagram. And Ben, I appreciate your encouraging me to get going again, more so on posting that information, because it is interesting. I mean, it's amazing the comments I get from that. So, and I think it's incredibly educational, or brings up some questions about stuff. So I appreciate your encouraging me on that, because I'll get that going again.
Well, thank you, Erik. Thank you for being a guest on the podcast and for everything you do in the bicycling and physical therapy space. It's been a great conversation, and look forward to hopefully getting some interaction after the fact on this. So have a great rest of your day.
Thanks a ton, Ben, and thanks to Orthopaedic Physical Therapy Academy.